Hello, I'd like to talk to you about the wheels of mobilization. Before I tell you about that, could I share a story with you? Several months ago, I was invited to come to a school in Asia to teach. And while I was in that school, it was my practice to get to know the students. And there were a number of students that came from East Asia in this school. And as I talked to one of the students, I found out that he actually had come to Christ as a member of an unreached people group in East Asia. He mentioned the name of that people group and I almost fell off my chair. The reason is because 15 years ago, an organization I was a part of had adopted that unreached people group. You know, we never knew how to actually send somebody to that people group, but the one thing we did do was we prayed for them. So we would pray and we would pray, and we never had a report that came back. We never heard a testimony of anything that happened. But here I was 6 months ago talking to this student and seeing the fruit of the prayers that had been prayed. Here was a person who had come to Christ from that unreached people group. What I want to talk to you about is the wheels of mobilization. We've all seen beautiful cars before, right? Who doesn't want to drive a beautiful car? But imagine yourself getting into a car to drive it and there's no wheels. The car's not going to go anywhere. You can have the most beautiful car, but without the wheels, it's not moving. Prayer is the wheels of missions mobilization. Without prayer, nothing happens at all. So many times when we talk about missions mobilization, we begin with prayer because it's the first step in missions mobilization. Jesus said, "Pray the Lord of the harvest sends workers into the harvest." You see, our Lord taught us the importance of prayer with regard to the Great Commission. And we've also seen great examples of the importance of prayer down through mission history. One of the greatest mobilization events that ever took place was in the Moravian Church in Germany. Back in the 1700s, Count Zinzendorf started a prayer meeting that lasted 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 100 years. As a result of that 100-year-long prayer meeting, 2,132 missionaries over a 200-year period were sent out into the nations. They had an enormous impact, and that impact all traced back to prayer. You see, missions is moved by God. It's not moved by man, it's moved by God. But God is moved by prayer. So without prayer, God doesn't move. And without God moving, missions doesn't happen. That's why missions is so important. So when we talk about the wheels of missions mobilization, it's really important for a mobilizer to be a person of prayer themselves. We have this saying in the organization I'm a part of. We say, first do something, then teach it. So it's really good as you're taking your first steps in missions mobilization to begin with prayer for yourself. Take on a commitment to pray for unreached peoples around the world. It could be a small commitment, but begin someplace. And as you do that, God will give you more authority to mobilize other people into prayer. And that could be your first step in missions mobilization. We all ask the question, what should I mobilize for? I want to challenge you. Why don't you let your first mobilization project to mobilize other Christians to pray that God's harvest will happen among the world's unreached peoples. So, what should you focus on when you have one of these prayer mobilizations? You should focus on extending God's kingdom. You know, we don't pray just for buildings or just pray for money or just pray for workers. I mean, these things can be good, but it's the end result that we're interested in. And that is people coming to faith in Jesus Christ in the places where Christ is not known, where there is no gospel witness. And your prayers can open up doors in those places for people to do just that. So when you do this and you begin to mobilize other Christians to pray that the gospel go into those parts of the world, have the attitude of thinking globally, not just about your own community or your own country or your own denomination, but think about the entire world, the needs of Hindus, the needs of Buddhists, the needs of Muslims. I know what you're thinking, though. You're thinking, but that's so broad. How can I possibly do all that in prayer? Well, I would also encourage you to take on some specific area of need. Maybe a particular unreached Muslim people group, or a particular community that's poor in the world and hasn't had the gospel. And pray for practical things to happen among that people group. So embrace the globe, but zero in on practical, specific needs when you mobilize people into prayer. So I'm so encouraged that I get a chance to share this with you, because I know that as you do, what I'm suggesting you do, you are going to be greatly blessed yourself. You know, our Lord said in John's Gospel, "Until now you've prayed for nothing in my name. Pray and receive that your joy might be full." You know what's common about all mission mobilizers when they mobilize people to pray? They have overflowing joy. Why? Because God begins moving in places where He's not yet known, and we begin to feel the Father's joy that that's happening. So let me encourage you. Put the wheels on your mission mobilization. Let your first project be to mobilize other Christians to pray that the gospel goes to the ends of the earth.
Mentoring Missions Advocates. This is globalcastresources.com.